A cost-effectiveness analysis that only includes healthcare costs is said to have a healthcare perspective. An analysis that not only includes healthcare costs, but also costs outside the healthcare sector is said to have a societal perspective. A typical cost outside the healthcare sector is productivity losses. Productivity losses are sometimes referred to as indirect costs. Productivity losses are not lost income for the individual himself. Instead, the productivity losses are to a great extent borne by the other individuals in society. Consider this simplified society consisting of two individuals, Kalle and Nisse. They both produce goods and services through work, and they both consume goods and services. The grey area above their heads represent the total amount of produced goods and services in this society. The more they consume, the happier they get. This doesn't have to be consumption of flat screens and waterproof Walkmans. It could be consumption of food, healthcare, and education. If Nisse becomes ill and unable to work, he will not contribute to society with his production anymore. Luckily, he is insured and can still get the most necessary goods, such as food. However, now that Nisse is ill and unproductive, the total amount of produced goods and services available for consumption decreases. This will limit Kalle's possibilities for consumption as well. Let's assume Nisse's work is to build bicycles. One bicycle costs $1,000. A normal week he would build 3 bicycles, which corresponds to $3,000. However, if Nisse is ill and unable to work for a week, he will not produce the 3 bicycles. The value of the lost production is therefore $3,000. But most often it is more difficult than that to estimate the productivity loss. Suppose Nisse works with telephone service. What would the value of 1 week's production then be? One way to estimate the productivity loss is to consider what the employer is actually paying for Nisse to do at the workplace. This is calculated as Nisse's wage plus taxes and social fees. If the employer is paying $8,000 per month for Nisse's wage, the productivity loss to society of 1 week's absenteeism would be estimated as $2,000. Suppose Nisse gets injured at age 55 and is unable to work for the rest of his life. According to the human capital approach, the value of the lost production due to this injury is Nisse's wage, including all taxes and social fees from age 55 to age of retirement, age 65. But according to the friction cost method, this is an overestimation. And that's so because after a certain period of time, referred to as the friction period, Nisse would be replaced by an unemployed. Productivity losses due to Nisse's injury will then only occur during the friction period. After the friction period, there are no more productivity losses according to this method. Representatives of the human capital approach argue that except from violating neoclassic economic theory, the friction cost method is complicated from a practical perspective. Replacement of an absent worker would lead to a chain of replacements, and only in the end would an unemployed step in. It would be very difficult to identify and quantify all these friction periods. The friction cost method is today primarily used in the Netherlands, while the human capital approach is more common in the rest of the world.